Hello, everyone. Welcome to Officepal Thought Leaders webinar. The topic for today's webinar is Get Your Job Description Right. 5 simple steps to develop a new and improved job description. And the speaker for today is Julie Perrine, administrative expert, author, founder, and CEO of All Things Admin. Many of you already know Julie. Perhaps you would have checked out Julie's website or might have checked out some of the templates that she's developed or visited her website. So Julie is an administrative expert and trainer with over 20 years of experience in the admin profession. And Julie is also known as the procedures pro in the industry. You know, she's known for some of the good work she's done around administrative templates. She's also the creator and author of The Innovative Admin, Unleash the Power of Innovation in Your Administrative Career. And she's also authored several ebooks and training programs. Some of you remember the webinar in January, where we talked about IOTSA and we had Lucy Brazier as the speaker. She mentioned one of the charters of IOTSA is around job descriptions. Julie has done a lot of work around that area, and she's developed some methodology and interesting templates which she's going to share today. A few quick things. We've already shared the handouts for this webinar via SlideShare. I've seen that some of you have already been able to download, probably several hundred views and over 50 downloads.
We have it loaded on our website too at allthingsadmin.com/IOTSA. And it's right there, the register button. So you can quickly download it and print it and have it for taking notes on during today's session.
Fantastic. So that's great. So we'll get started. So let me pass on the presenter control to Julie.
Well, first of all, I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today. It's great to have so many of you here live on today's WebEx. And I'm actually going to turn off my webcam just for the main content portion of the webinar and show you just my slides so there's not as much distraction. So job descriptions. How accurate is your current job description? Do you know what the expectations are that you are trying to meet and exceed every day at the office? And my favorite question, does your executive really know all the things that you handle for him or her each and every day? Or each and every week? Based on the turnout and the interest in today's webinar, I suspect that the answers aren't as encouraging as I would hope that they are, but there is good news. So as I was saying, 2014 is the International Year of the Secretary and Administrative Assistant. And All Things Admin is very proud to be a global representative supporting and promoting IOTSA 2014. So together, we are on a mission to help you create an accurate job description. So I wanted to start by sharing the IOTSA charter. It reads that every administrative professional, executive assistant, secretary, management assistant, personal assistant, whatever the title may be, anywhere in the world will, first and foremost, have a job description that accurately depicts the role you are doing. And that's why we're here today. But it continues that you'll also receive investment in your personal development, whether in terms of money or time to participate, and have the opportunity to network with your peers. And IOTSA 2014 gives us the opportunity to do all of those things. But our focus today is on developing that new and improved job description. So we'd like to ask each of you to help spread the word and share that charter within your companies also. And we invite you to join in the online conversation so we can spread the word through social media. And the hashtag that we are using throughout the year and for today's webinar is IOTSA 2014. It's the pound or hash symbol followed by the IOTSA 2014 acronym. And what we want you to do is to share your insights, ask questions, and join in this year-long celebration. You can also tag @ProceduresPro and @Officepal HQ as part of your questions or sharing with the information we provide in today's webinar. All All right, so today's agenda is pretty simple. We're going to start by talking about what you need to know before you begin this process. Because sometimes if you start out thinking this is a 5-minute or a 30-minute job, you're going to be a little disappointed. There's a little bit of effort involved, but a few things that you need to know before you begin and you should be ready to run. We're going to look at why job descriptions are important to your career in the first place. I'll outline my 5 simple steps to help you get your new and improved job description up and running. And I'll show you several ways throughout the presentation today that allow you to fast track this process instead of making it a long drawn out thing that you may not feel like you already have time for. And at the end, I'll also share several resources. And one of those resources is a page on our website with all of the downloads and templates that we'll talk about during today's presentation. So what do you need to know before you begin? Well, as chance would have it, I attended a training workshop yesterday morning, and I was sitting next to an HR person from a very large company. And I took the opportunity to tap into her expertise on today's topic since I was sitting right next to her. And the good news is that the information that I'm sharing with you today is right on track. But the bad news is there is a lot of ambiguity, even in HR circles, around job descriptions. And therein lies the challenge in updating and creating a new one for yourself. So the first thing I want you to know before you begin is that this is going to require some time, thought, and effort. This isn't something you're going to do overnight necessarily, unless you've already put some effort into it. And that's okay, because as we all know, things that are worthwhile sometimes take a little time. And there are no standard templates. You can search the web from every company imaginable, and there will be commonalities between job descriptions, but there are no set templates or strict guidelines on what you should or shouldn't include in a job description. The company needs actually dictate that. So your HR department will give you maybe a template that they currently use, but those requirements are going to vary. And that doesn't mean that you can't include additional sections or components in the one that you actually draft, because you and your executive may actually have an unofficial version that you work from, while the official HR version, depending on what your company offers or prefers, may look a little different. And that's okay. And then realize the implementation takes a little bit of time. The smaller your organization, the more flexible it probably is. But larger companies, job descriptions are a big deal. And that's why it takes so long to get them updated and changed. And so you need to factor that into the equation from the word go. And like I said, you and your executive may have to create an arrangement where you both are using that as what you're being measured against, but it may not officially become the HR version for months and sometimes even years, depending on what the process is. And finally, as Dalit mentioned in the introduction, administrative procedures is one of the things that I love and adore and spend a lot of time training assistants on how to create and get started. And there is a very, very strong link between your administrative procedures manual and your job description. And I'll draw some comparisons and highlights to that throughout the presentation today. But know this, if you've already started your administrative procedures manual, you've got a lot of content just sitting right there waiting for you to incorporate into your new and improved job description. So you're already ahead of the game. So one of the primary reasons that we actually need job descriptions and that they're important is so that our companies can advertise for new jobs or vacancies that they need to fill. And so recruiters use them to find candidates, and candidates use them to actually learn more about the positions that have become available. And job descriptions are ultimately designed to help you in your role define what that is, outline some of the accountabilities that are associated with the position, and clarify and set the expectations that you're trying to meet or exceed each and every day that you go to work. And these things combine to make your job description hugely valuable in several ways. And the first one is an annual performance review time. There's a logical, reasonable description in place by which you can measure job performance and by which you can tie other goals and objectives that you may have professionally to. It promotes equitable pay and job classifications throughout an organization. And part of the reason we sometimes struggle with what is the progression of this position within my company is because there are no formal job descriptions written. Nobody knows if it goes from secretary 1 to secretary 2 to executive assistant, or what that progression is. And so as you work to develop your job description, it may actually become a bigger project within your company. You may not be the only one who needs some help here. So you can actually blaze the trail and lead the way in how to take them through this process at the same time. And it provides context for training and development requests you may make. I've worked in companies where we hire candidates based on their current experience and expertise, but we expect them to attain certain licenses or certifications or credentials upon being hired. And those are outlined in their job description. So it also gives you a tool for making training and development requests as the employee, and with your company helping support you attaining those credentials or certifications. And ultimately, then it helps facilitate your own career progression. What's next? What's the next level? What am I trying to aspire to? And it helps your company plan and prepare from a succession planning perspective. Because I know that there are some of you on today's webinar who can't imagine doing anything other than what you are doing right now. You love your job, you love your boss, you just need to get a better job description put in place. But things change. Sometimes because we want them to, and sometimes because we have absolutely no say in it at all. So you've got to be prepared no matter what. And you need to also make sure that your company is prepared. What if you up and take another position or another opportunity comes and finds you? You may love where you're at today, but if your executive leaves unexpectedly, or there's a merger or an acquisition, what next? And this will help you start thinking about some of those things before they happen. To help each of you develop your new and improved job description, I've developed a simple procedure for you. And shockingly, 5 simple steps. I love keeping things in terms of 5 because I think there's magic in the number 5. It's easy to remember. It doesn't max you out. And there's 5 work days in the average work week. So if you break things down into increments, it's easy to map things out in 5s. There's value in each step that I'm going to share with you today. So stick with me as I explain them and give you some of the background on each one. And at the end, I'll share a workbook template that we have developed in conjunction with the International Year of the Secretary 2014 that will take you step by step through these 5 steps and give you more detail, or a plan of action per se, to guide you through this process. So we'll quickly outline the 5 simple steps. Step 1 is take inventory. Step 2, complete a self-assessment. Step 3, describe your current job. And then step 4 is where we actually use what we've done in steps 1, 2, and 3 to create our new and improved job description. And then finally, step 5, discuss it with your executive or HR department and pursue with the implementation of it. So step 1, take inventory. What do you do each day, each week, each month in your current position? Could you list all of the tasks and all of the projects and all of the meetings that you coordinate and all of the individual responsibilities that you have? And if you don't have a list like this started, we have a free template that you can download to get started with. You can either use our downloaded version electronically and just create a shortcut for it on your desktop and add to it throughout the day, each and every little thing that you do. It doesn't matter how big or how small, get it on a list. And if you're not really into doing it electronically, grab a notepad and start writing things down on a notepad next to your computer or desk, phone, wherever it's convenient for you. Because what you need to understand here is you are probably going to be surprised by what you learn doing this exercise. Whenever we have assistants do this in the administrative procedures creation process, they are shocked at how many things they actually do and how many responsibilities that they actually have. And so that's why I have you start with taking an inventory, because facts are persuasive when you can see it on paper and when you can truly quantify. It's not just, I feel like there's so much I'm doing, or I feel like I need someone else to help me. It's, I can prove to you on paper how I am spending my days, my weeks, and my years in this position. And this is why it is a justification for either that raise or promotion or an additional headcount hire that I am presenting to you today. Or that you would say to your executive that this is the reason why we're having this discussion. and that I'm initiating it. And there's another tab on that same spreadsheet template that you can download that has you outline the things that you're doing specifically for the executives that you support, for your vice presidents or your team leads or the teams that you're taking care of. What are those things that you do daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually? Write those things down, because that becomes personal for your executive when they're like, oh, yes, she does do all of these things for me. Or, wow, I mean, I knew he did a lot, but that is immense. And so all of these things on top of what you are just normally doing over the course of your day-to-day position all start to come together to create that larger picture and overview of what should be in your job description. And there's a fine line between job descriptions and procedures manuals. Your procedures manual is going to have every last thing you do in detail. And part of doing this exercise will also prepare you, if you don't already have a procedures manual, to know exactly what you need to start capturing and documenting to create one. But your job description then becomes a higher level overview with enough detail to be specific, but with enough general categories to allow some wiggle room. And what we're trying to avoid is the bucket category of other tasks as assigned, or whatever else comes up. We're going to add it to your job description. So you can avoid that by getting specific with the job description, but at the same time, you do not want a 20-page job description. What you need is a summary page that gives the top 8 to 15 responsibilities, maybe with a little detail explained with those, but then your procedures manual takes it to that next level of depth and goes into more detail about every last thing that may or may not include. And at the bottom of this slide is the link that you can go to download the free resources that I'm referring to today. I would encourage you to wait until we're finished, and that way you can download them all at the same time and still concentrate on what we're sharing. But that's the link where we are offering all of the free templates for today's presentation. That brings us to step 2. It's time to complete a self-assessment. I believe there's a book entitled something along the lines of, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else. And that's the way I feel about career planning. And that's why I bring it into the discussion for job descriptions, because if you don't know what you're even trying to pursue or aspire to, what good is it going to do you to create this job description? There's still some value in it, but not as much value as if you know what you're trying to accomplish in the first place. So before you put the effort into writing this new job description, I want you to make sure you know where your career is headed and why. So step 2 adds clarity and focus to why you are doing what you're doing. You're going to look at, what is your current role? What is your ideal role? You may like a lot of things about your current role, but it may not be your ideal role. So if you were in your ideal role, what would that look like? What do you need to do to get there? What types of education and training would be required to help you achieve that next place you want to go with your career? And one of the free templates that you can download from our site is called From Reactive to Proactive, Creating Your Strategic Administrative Career Plan. And I believe if you do a little bit of strategic career planning at this point in the process, you're going to have a much more favorable outcome with the final job description that you develop and implement for your position. Now, as always, I'm very interested in helping you fast track this. So one of the things you can do is start with your current job description and check with HR, see what they have on file. That's probably where you're going to need to start at to begin with. And then ask them at the same time if they have a job description template to follow. If you were creating a new position, what would be the template that they recommend you use? And while some of the categories and sections that I'll encourage you to maybe complete information for aren't necessarily asked for on their job description, it will still give you the final version. If you want HR to implement it, you'll know exactly which format that they're looking for. So this is one way you can fast track it, by starting with your current job description to see what it says and pull out the pieces that work and identify the pieces that maybe need to be updated or changed. And it also helps you prepare for step 3. Describe your current job. So one of the things I recommend you also do at this stage is pull out your resume or professional portfolio if you have one created. Those will help you complete some of the components for this step. If you have a procedures manual, pull that out also. Because what you're going to start with in describing your current job is a professional summary statement. Every job description typically starts with one. And I have a sample here that I can share with you. This was for a position that I actually was filling at a company that I worked for when I was doing HR, and it was for the Director of Administrative Services. And it started with this professional summary statement. Directs, manages, coordinates, and oversees the daily operations of administrative support services for the organization, which includes overall executive support, office clerical and support tasks, office administration, human resources, safety and security, and other related services. This was a pretty big, comprehensive overview, but it was in a couple of sentences how we summed up what this position was responsible for. Basically, they were responsible for all things administrative at that point. So that's how you start. It was just a high-level summary or overview. Your current job description may have one you can start from, or you may want to start writing your own just based on what actually applies in your current position. And then you want to identify some of the responsibilities that you currently have. List those out, refer back to step one with the inventory and see what's starting to show up. And as you start to record the tasks that you do each and every day, there's going to be some natural categories that start to surface. So if you have a procedures manual, you may want to look at the sections of your manual to see what those categories are. Or if you don't, you'll see in this list that you start to create with the inventory that there's some natural breaks in event planning and travel coordination. Maybe there's staff meeting things that you do, and that's kind of its own section all by itself. Maybe there are board-related tasks that you're responsible for with coordinating executive meetings and board travel. There may be accounting and HR functions. All of those things are kind of their own category or section that go into the responsibilities that you oversee. And then look at the accomplishments that you've had in your current role. What are things that you have done or developed or implemented that you should be taking credit for? Did you create a procedures binder? Did you make something more efficient? Did you lead a project team or significantly contribute to one? Identify where you are adding value and the accomplishments that you've had in your current position. And don't forget to look at some of the other experience. Have you taken on leadership positions within professional organizations or for charities or nonprofits that you're involved in? Maybe your company gets involved in charity events and you've helped volunteer on different committees or had responsibilities with those. Identify all of your skills and abilities, any honors and awards that you may have received, and don't be afraid to highlight and showcase specific areas of expertise that you have that you're using in your current position. In the workbook that you can download from our website, there are several other categories to get you brainstorming and thinking about that as well. And with your resume in hand, you can probably pull some of these things right off of your resume at the same time. Another way to fast track this process, if you're looking at how to describe your current position and as we prepare for step 4 in creating your new job description, is to let your fingers do the research for you. I am a huge fan of Googling everything I can possibly Google to do my research. So I want you to go online and review job postings within your current company, job postings in competitor companies or in other area companies that you can pull up and see what their job postings may be at any given time. Do some job description research online. And when I talk about using Google, I want you to be as specific as you can be so that Google can help you find it faster. And often when I watch people do research on Google, I'm always surprised that they're only typing in 1 or 2 or 3 words to do a keyword search. When I do Google keyword searches, I type entire sentences sometimes. So if you're looking for a job description to describe what you're currently doing, or maybe to give you ideas on the new one you're going to write, include all of the keywords that may go in that. So if I wanted to have a new title of Director of Administrative Services, I would include Director of Administrative Services, job description template, and possibly even some specifics of a type of industry or maybe the country that I live in, and see what Google brings up for me. The reason I recommend you do that is there's a lot of stuff just in general on the web about job descriptions. You're going to have to sort through a lot of clutter to get to what you would really want the quickest. So the more specific you can be with your Google keyword searches, the better. And then, as we mentioned at the very beginning, share some of your research with the rest of us. This is a team effort. It's a global effort. And I want every one of us to share what we're finding on the web with our network globally. And you're going to be able to help others fast track their process, and they're going to be able to help you at the same time. That brings us up to step 4. Create your new and improved job description. Now, this is where you actually probably will spend a fair amount of time, depending on how refined and honed you want this to be before you present it to your executive or HR department. And the elements of a job description are going to vary. The ones that we share with you on this slide and the next one are just the most common or general categories that you typically see in a lot of job descriptions. Not every company asks for each one of these, but I wanted you to be as prepared as you could be in presenting this, depending on what the template for your company looked like. So I've included all of these. And if you realize that this isn't something your company asks for, you may be able to just skip right over it. But there actually may be a little value in answering the question and completing that section just for general background and support when you're talking to your executive. So take a look at each one of these. And in the template itself, we guide you through and give you some questions to get you thinking about each section. So for a new job title, what do you think would be more accurate or more descriptive for a title of your position and with your responsibilities? Go out and do some research on sites like monster.com or salary.com and see what other companies are doing, what other titles they have come up with. Share your information on the web, on LinkedIn groups or on the Officepal forum or on Twitter and Facebook, and see what other titles are out there that you can potentially explore for your position. Location. In some job descriptions, if you have a global company, it's important to add the specific city or division or campus that you're located on. And who does it report to? I think it's important to have the reporting structure incorporated into a job description so it's very clear. You may support an entire team of people, but who do you specifically report to if you needed to go and get some direction on priorities or have questions about how to handle or manage issues that arise in your day-to-day work? And then sometimes the classification or supervisory role is important to have. Some assistants actually have team members that they are supervising, and that should be outlined in the job description. And others don't have anyone who reports directly to them. And if that's the case, sometimes it's not as important to have this mentioned, but we add it just because it's common in a lot of job descriptions that you'll see. And then the position summary. Now, we had you get started writing one in step 3 for your current position, and that's going to give you something to start with for your new and improved job description. But what you might want to do again is do some online research and see what other descriptions are being used in the postings that you find online. And so what you want to explain is, why does this position exist? What are the primary objectives for its overall contribution to this company? So I'll read a sample here. Serves as a strategic administrative partner in daily business operations, facilitates the flow of information and communication between departments and team members, keeps projects moving forward, acts as a liaison between the executive team and external business partners and board members. And so again, it's going to be honed down. Initially, you may have 3 or 4 sentences, but honing it down into 1 or 2 sentences that succinctly describes your position. And then primary responsibilities. As you go back and look at the survey or the inventory that you did in step 1, what are some of those natural categories that are rising to the top, or the areas of accountability that you're responsible for? And you're going to have a list of about 8 to 15 major items on that list for your primary responsibilities. And then other expectations. This is an interesting section because your position may handle things above and beyond what the normal job description would allow for. But I think it's important to note those, even if your job description template doesn't ask for it. So think about, does this position handle personal appointments or errands for the executive that you support? Is there an expectation of working longer than normal hours or excessive overtime? I took a new position at one point in my career, and thankfully, I asked some very good questions in the interview process because I learned that the expectation was I would be at the office from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. That's a little longer than 8 to 5, which is the expectation most people would have going into a new position. And because of that, I was able to negotiate higher on the salary and was able to get it when I said, listen, these are the expectations that you're sharing with me in this job description, and I'm telling you that it is worth more in order for me to sacrifice these things in my life to be able to meet this expectation for you. And it was a great thing for both of us to know up front. And so other expectations, that's one of the places where you can outline some of those things that are an anomaly to what may normally be expected in an administrative position such as yours. And I'm not going to go through each of these in detail, but what are the educational requirements for doing your job? What types of experience requirements are required? Are there professional certifications or licenses that your position should have, or if they would aspire to, it would be helpful in being even more effective in that role? Some job descriptions also ask for core competencies. And what they're looking for there are the behaviors and skills required for that position. So those types of things would be things like problem solving, critical thinking, making good judgments, reliability, diversity, cooperation, teamwork. Those are some of the specifics. And these are all outlined in the workbook that you can download. So you don't have to worry. Missed a couple of those that I shared. They are all included in the workbook that we have for you. And then obviously other knowledge, skills, and abilities. And this is one of those areas where you can actually start to subtly incorporate training and development into your job description. So as I mentioned earlier, I worked in the insurance industry, and when we had new hires that we wanted to attain certain licenses or get certain training once they became a new employee, it was in some of this area here, looking at the skills and abilities and knowledge that we wanted them to have. And if they didn't have it, then we knew we had a training and development plan that we could put in place for them. And so there may be some things that you want to have your skill set that you don't currently have, and you can start to nudge your way in to get the corporate support you're looking for in this section here. And then physical demands of the job and the work environment that you're working in. And I add work environment because a lot of times we expect an office job, but sometimes those office jobs are in a more industrial environment or in a more agricultural related environment. And so giving a little bit of specifics about what the actual work environment is related to the position can be helpful not only for you, but if the job description is used for hiring new candidates later, that can be very helpful. So another way to fast track this process of writing your new and improved job description is to ask colleagues within your company and outside of your company to share theirs with you. This isn't violating any standards. Job descriptions are usually pretty public because it's what they're using to actually hire candidates with. So asking someone to share theirs shouldn't be a big deal. And if it is, ask someone else. And then leverage your social networks. LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter all allow the use of hashtags now. And so we can keep the conversation connected using the hashtag IOSA2014 when you're asking others for help on this, or when you're sharing a resource with someone. And this can be a great way for all of us, again, to help each other and to collaborate in a global fashion in helping everyone achieve the implementation of a new and improved job description for their position. And that brings us up to step 5. And as Laura Schwartz would say, it's showtime. But there's a few important things to be prepared for as you begin to discuss your new job description with your executive or HR department. So first of all, you have to prepare for the meeting. And by doing that, you format and finalize the draft version of your job description that you plan to share. And then schedule the meeting so that there's a time on the calendars where you're actually going to sit down and discuss it. This probably isn't one of those times where you just pop in on someone and drop it on their desk and expect to have a meaningful conversation. You want to send them a copy for advance review so that they've got a little time to start thinking about and digesting what you actually are doing in the position and how this new job description is an improvement upon the old one. And it's probably helpful to include the old one at the same time so they can begin to see, again, facts are persuasive. And when you can put it on paper in very quantifiable terminology, and having it on paper with the old one next to the new one is one great way to do that. Give them that chance to review it in advance. And then hold the meeting. And I would actually encourage you, this is going to shock some of you and make others of you laugh if you're familiar with my proclivity for organizing things in the 3-ring binder, but create a job description development binder. And all of these things you've done in steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and now step 5, create a section or a tab for each one and take those materials with you, nice and organized in your job description binder, to that meeting with you. So you have it as backup support and documentation. And I always encourage people to pick your timing wisely. If it's board meeting time, or it's a great big project is about to be finishing up, or there's a lot of stress and tension in the office right now because of the political climate of whatever's happening, it may not be the right time to force your way in with your new job description. And it's been my experience in life and throughout the course of my career that when I force things like this, it causes things to break and the outcomes are not nearly as desirable as I had hoped in the beginning. So choose your timing wisely, but get it scheduled or ask, if now is not a good time, when would be a time for us to be able to discuss this? And hopefully they don't push you off too far down the road, but if you've done your homework and you are prepared and you take the initiative to schedule this meeting with your executive or HR department, then these are the first things you need to do with step 5 to present it. But I also want you to be prepared for some follow-up, because as you have this meeting, whether it's with HR first and then your executive or vice versa, they are probably going to ask you to do some updates, maybe some additional research, or even change and modify some things about the job description, depending on how those conversations go. So it's important to keep an open mind and to stay open to the suggestions that they share with you so that you can get further down the path of actually being able to implement this new job description. And as I mentioned at the beginning, keep in mind that depending upon the HR process your company has in place, you and your boss or executive may have to have an unofficial version that you operate from in the interim until it becomes incorporated into the HR standards company-wide. And again, smaller companies, it's much more flexible and easy to move and go with the flow. Larger companies have a lot more structure and regulations and rules in place, so sometimes it's a little more difficult, but don't let that deter you. It is still worth the effort, and I guarantee you'll still be glad you put the thought and time into doing this. But what if things don't go as you had hoped they would? It's not necessarily the end of the road, and it doesn't mean that your efforts were in vain. I guarantee you that you are going to learn things in this process that will help your career development. The assembly of all of the parts and pieces and tasks that are associated with you do each and every day can help you get your administrative procedures launched. The strategic career planning can help you figure out what you want to do next, or if you're not getting the support you need where you're currently at, it may give you the plans and the structure for formulating a plan for what you want to pursue next, maybe in another company. Maybe it inspires you to prepare to start looking for a new position somewhere else or with a different department. And I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying that all of the things you've done to get to this stage of the game are valuable in their own right and all contribute to helping you become an even better professional and help your advancing and developing your career. But if you don't get the response you want, you need to not immediately put up barriers so that there's tension in the room. I want you to respectfully listen to the reasons that you're given, because there may be some valid reasons that you're just not aware of when you initiated the meeting to begin with. Find out if you can ask again in a different way or at a different time. Maybe the timing was off. Maybe the way you presented it wasn't as polished or wasn't as effective as it could have been. And ask how you can make it possible. Your executive or HR department will probably be able to brainstorm some possibilities with you and give you some coaching on how to pursue this if you pursue it again, or if you revamp your process and try again at a later date. Ask what is possible if this is not, or when it may be possible if it isn't possible right now. And ask what you can do to improve the way you're asking. Because sometimes the workshop I attended yesterday morning was all about more effective communication. And sometimes we don't even realize the things that we are doing that are sabotaging the effectiveness of our communication. So ask what you can do to improve the way you are asking. And finally, don't give up. It may not be no, never. It may just be no, not right now. We just need a few more months to get through this other initiative, and then we'll tackle this. Or sure, you can do that, but we're not even going to take this up with HR until next year at annual performance review time. There may be some good reasons for why they say no, and be willing and open to hearing what those are. And as we begin to wrap up today's webinar, I want you to think about a very powerful three-letter word that I find many are afraid of, but it is one of the most powerful and career-expanding words on the planet. And that three-letter word is ask. Because you don't get what you don't ask for. And what you don't ask for stays the same. So if you don't like where things are currently at, but you aren't willing to ask for someone to do something different about it or to consider a new option, then things aren't going to get any better than they are right now. So you've got to be willing to ask. That doesn't mean that you don't have some homework to do in the meantime and that there's not some work and effort involved, but it is important that you understand and take advantage of asking in the first place. Now, we've shared a lot of tips and a lot of things with you today, and we've assembled about a half dozen different resources on our website to help you with this process as well. The free template downloads are available on our website at allthingsadmin.com/IOTA. They're absolutely free. There's no charge associated with them. All we ask is that you give us your name and email so that we can stay in touch with you going forward. And you can also learn more about IOTA 2014 through some articles on the executivesecretary.com website, through the Professional Association for Secretaries and Assistants, and Officepal is also another resource that you'll want to stay connected with throughout this year of the International Year of the Secretary and Assistant. And again, we encourage you to tweet about today's webinar and to tweet about your job description development journey. We want you to ask questions. We want you to share the resources that you're coming across. We want to help you expand your network at the same time. That's one of the additional initiatives that's part of the IOTA charter. So join us in this celebration of our profession and all that it has to offer, and the new role and recognition that we are working to raise the awareness of in the workplace globally. And do that by joining in the conversation online using the IOTA 2014 hashtag. We are doing this for you, so take advantage of everything that it has to offer to you during this year. So with that, I will turn it back over to Dilip, if I can figure out how to do that. I think it's stop sharing. And we will open it up for Q&A. If you have questions that you wanted to ask or things that you have specific inquiries about.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that was definitely a great presentation, very nice, simple, crisp methodology on how one should go about revising and developing a new and improved job description. It's probably as easy as counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you talked about some of the workbooks, right, which they could download from your website. Would it be possible to maybe just show how the workbook looks like? Because I think some of the audience were a bit curious and there were a few questions. So do you have a template handy that you can just show that they can download from your website?
Yes, let me open it and then I will share my screen again here.
Sure.
So the workbook itself it's about 13 pages with the cover in the back. And so it starts with taking the inventory and how you can download the free resources, how to get started with the inventory process itself. And then it takes you step by step through the self-assessment. And one of the other components that you can download in addition to the workbook is our strategic career planning report. And that gives even more questions if you want to go more in depth. But in the workbook for the job description development, we just basically ask the questions that I mentioned in the webinar. Where are you now? What's your current role? What does your ideal role look like? And you don't have to spend hours and hours on this unless you really want to, but just to kind of get you thinking about where you're at, where you want to go, and how you plan to get there. Because that can really help you incorporate some of those elements into the final job description, which then can help you with those training and development requests that you want to make, and for some of the promotions or succession planning things that you may want to incorporate into the discussion with your executive or HR department. Then it takes you into describing your current job, and we give you some blanks and ask some questions in each section to get you started and to kind of trigger the question and the answer. The other experience, all the things from do you have teaching and training experience, internships you've participated in, specific computer skills or software expertise. And then step 4, creating your new and improved job description. We have all of the sections that were highlighted on the presentation, but again, ask some questions to kind of get you thinking about what do I want to include or how do I want to describe this in my final version. And if these sections don't correlate with what your HR department asks for or requires, you can certainly skip over them. But we include them here because these are a lot of the common or the most general ones that we found in the research that we did in preparing this. And then as you get to the end, it goes through the steps of discussing and presenting it to your executive so that you can implement this new and improved job description. And then finally, the resources that I've shared today, we reattach them here in the workbook. And we put it together like this because a lot of times in my experience, I need a plan of action to help me get through what I'm trying to accomplish, whether it's for a goal or a great big project that I'm working on. And so we wanted to kind of have a self-guided process in place, and this workbook is designed to help facilitate that.
That's a fantastic resource. I'd strongly recommend everyone who's viewing it to go immediately after this webinar and download it. It will be a very helpful tool. I think, in fact, I think this is perhaps a great tool for anybody to develop job description for any role for that matter, not just admin professionals alone. Thanks a lot, Judy, for creating such a great tool and giving it away free to the community. That's awesome. Really appreciate your efforts. So another question is about the inventory of responsibilities that you mentioned. By any chance, would you have a standard template of some of the responsibilities that admins typically do?
Well, again, there's so much room for interpretation and for how different companies want you to put these together, which is why this is such a big conversation point for us to begin with. Because there are no standards, hopefully maybe we can help set a few, but I'm not even sure, even if we didn't set standards globally for this, just being able to outline and detail for your specific position what you do So an example I have here, and this was for that Director of Administrative Services. The specific high-level overview things that we outlined for this position when I was trying to hire for it were things such as assists with project management of new business partner implementations, new products, and general business development projects. Develops procedures and policies for office activities, establishes work procedures and standards to improve efficiency and effectiveness of assigned operations. So in this particular role, that person was responsible for human resources, for security, for the administrative oversight. And so they were to develop the policies for each of those areas as well. Performs routine and advanced correspondence, including letters, memorandums, and reports. Provides guidance and direction and information to employees and supervisors on specific situations that may arise, and that was part of that HR role. So it's do some Google searching. That's my best recommendation for that. There is so much and such a variance from company to company on how you might want to complete that section. But the goal is identify those major buckets or categories from your inventory, probably event planning, meeting coordination, calendar management, travel planning, HR functions possibly. The security and safety things can sometimes fall within the admin role if you're issuing keys and taking things back and forth from employees as new hires start or as employees leave. What are the major areas of responsibility? And then develop a bullet point or a sentence around what you expect the position to do related to that category. And that will get you started. Then if you do some Google research on what other companies are using as their descriptions, it will also give you some other wording ideas that you can use. And that way you don't have to totally create it from scratch. I know I do better editing someone else's work than I do sometimes creating it from scratch myself the first time. And that can be the way job descriptions work for a lot of people too. Find someone else's and take out what doesn't apply and keep what you like, and then look at someone else's and take out of theirs what you like and get rid of what doesn't apply. And in the end, you'll come up with a version that is unique to you, that means something and has some value.
Great. So, so the next question is, so in large companies, HR organizations often tend to have very rigid processes and procedures. So how can one go about initiating a change in job description and having something new and improvised job description if they're working in large companies?
Everybody's culture and internal operations are different from company to company. So you have to know a little bit about what the culture is within your company and how HR functions within that role. I've worked for a lot of entrepreneurial startups who actually outsource all of their HR functions. And so it's actually easier in some of those situations to do something like this than it is in a larger corporate structure where HR governs how everything gets done and it can move really slowly. But I would start with a conversation with someone that you know or trust or that has some influence within your HR department and ask them what is involved. Take the IOTSA charter with you, download the resources that Lucy Brazier has posted on the Executive Secretary website and that the PAFSA has posted on their website. And those resources are on that second to last slide that I shared with you today. Print those materials, take them with you, share them with your HR department, share them with your executive and ask. Again, there's that question, that word, ask. What would I have to do? What would the process be if I wanted to revise not only my job description, but address this for assistance across our organization? And then you may need to be willing to step up and take the lead with HR's support in some focus groups and some facilitation of bringing those other assistants together to participate in this process with you. And you're welcome to use this workbook. We developed it for this very purpose, and use it as your guide. Have all of the assistants do this at the same time. In fact, I always encourage with procedures, that you find a binder buddy or a procedures manual buddy to do it with. And I would encourage that with this process as well. But find out what HR would prefer you do from a process perspective, and then be willing to encourage or push back or go a little bit further if you don't necessarily get the answer you want, but maybe feel like there's an opportunity or a window for you to maybe go at it a different way. Okay, so like at the end of the presentation, if I can't do it in the way that I thought I wanted to pursue it, what can I do? What can we accomplish in updating the assistant's job description so that they're more accurate for the short term, and then in the long term, we'll come up with what that process needs to be to implement it company-wide.
Right. So that's great. So there are a couple of questions around, handouts. Obviously, Julie mentioned the link. Again, all things admin / then, a couple of questions about, attendance certificate. So if you can email your request to support@officepal.com, our team will review, your participation, and perhaps we'll be in touch with you in a week or 10 days from now, and we'll try to get that organized. So that's great. So thanks a lot, Julie, for your time and for joining us today. And thank you everyone for your participation. We're planning our next webinar on March 12th with the world's most connected PA. That's Angela Gary. She's based out of UK, and she will be sharing some of her tips on how she built her incredible network of over 19,000. So stay tuned. Bye, Julie.
Have a great day, everyone.